Hi team. If you're watching this, it's because I'm not with you today and I'm in a leadership team meeting, but I miss you and hopefully seeing my face brings you a little bit of joy. If not, sorry. So I'm just going to talk really quickly about some concepts that you're exploring. So at this point, if you're watching this video, you should have completed the analysis of the short passage of text and the data around the links and the hair cycle. So the links hair cycle is a really interesting example of some concepts that we want to just solidify what they are. So those concepts are limiting factors and carrying capacity. So it's not a shocker, right, that the amount of resource available to a living thing or to a population of living things is going to determine how many of them can survive. And so we call these resources that limit the maximum population size limiting factors, sometimes known as K. So when we talk about those K selected species, these are the species that have a pretty clear carrying capacity that limits their growth and sort of caps the population size, right? So this is most of the things that you can think about, right? It's just like think in your head, what are things that might limit how many of an organism can live in an ecosystem? We've got food, water, space, right? Many organisms need a particular amount of space, mates. Those are sort of the big ones, right? But habitat, places to live. If you need a particular type of tree as a bird to make your home, how many of those trees are there in the ecosystem? It's going to be really, I almost dropped my computer, really determining. And how many of you there are, right? So if a single tree can only support 2 birds and there's only 10 of those trees, you're maxed out at 20 of this type of bird in an ecosystem. So those are limiting factors, but that number, the 20, is what we know as the carrying capacity of that particular ecosystem, that particular place on Earth. Carrying capacity is going to differ between ecosystems and might change as the environment itself changes. Right? And so in the example of the links in the hair, I want you to think about what is the limiting factor? What is limiting the population growth in this relationship? And I want to just clarify one thing for you before I ask you to complete your final task. Remember that the hair is mostly R-selected species, which means R-selected species are less affected by this concept of carrying capacity. Carrying capacity says that the limiting factor is going to keep the population at a kind of stable rate. It is typically going to, if a new population moves into an environment, it's going to shoot up and then level off and stay about the same, right? A herd of lions in the savannah has typically relatively the same number of organisms over time. A herd of caribou in northern Canada or Alaska, similar story. They maintain relatively consistent numbers. Now, in the case of our specialist links, it is more difficult to do that because they depend so specifically on the hair. The hair, as an R-selected species, is going to grow exponentially and experience something known as overshoot. Because they are reproducing so fast, they're going to exceed the carrying capacity by so much. So let's imagine that if I buy like pizza for the class, right, and there are 20 of us in the class and I buy 1 pie of pizza, everybody's going to want some, but no one is going to get enough, right? So in the case of overshoot, the population grows so much that everybody wants some food and no one gets enough, and so the population experiences this drastic, what we call die-off, which is a typical experience for R-selected species. It is that die-off that is going to be really key when you think about this relationship. I will leave you with that. If you'll jump back into your student handout, you have an assignment. If you finish it up today, then you have nothing to do over Thanksgiving break, and I hope you really enjoy Thanksgiving break. You'll still have class with Mr. Irani on Monday, but you will not get prep work from that. If you do not finish this, a written response will be due at the end of Thanksgiving break.